heard very little middle ground of late in this whole Apple battle. Those who argue that Apple should let authorities open that phone up and give them access to everything that was on that San Bernardino attacker's mind and anything else that he was communicating that fateful day last year. Now, the other issue that comes up is privacy, freedom of speech, the ability to not have the government come in and intrude on you. In the middle ground is this idea that maybe courts shouldn't settle this, maybe Congress should in dealing with this encryption battle. So says Apple on this battle, and its attorney now, recruiting the likes of Ted Olson, arguably one of the most forceful and influential attorneys in the world. And he joins us right now. Ted, very good to have you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
You know, Ted, I've talked to a number of people on both sides of this issue, but what I hear from those, particularly those who are concerned about more such attacks, is that Apple should be ashamed of itself if something, God forbid, were to happen again. What do you say to that?
Well, we do have a Constitution in this country, and we have civil rights built into the Constitution. The framers of our Constitution quite seriously wanted the American people liberty, privacy protected by the Constitution. It's awful when someone will say that someone should be ashamed for standing up for the rights that are embedded in the Constitution. The terrorists want us to lose those rights. They want us to change our system and to have it be a different system where we're not protected in that way. When Apple stands up for the constitutional rights of itself and people who have trusted it by buying iPhones that have encryption systems embedded in them, Apple is doing something that may be courageous, but we have to bear in mind that the system that America has given to us is so valuable we must protect it.
Well, I did talk to Stephen Larson, who represents a number of the San Bernardino victims, Ted, and he doesn't quite see it that way. I want you to listen to this.
Nobody wants this to get in the bad guys' hands, and there are things that Apple could do to make sure that that does not happen. I think there's a lot of exaggeration and a lot of hyperbole going on here. This is what law enforcement does. They work with financial institutions, they work with telecommunications firms under a court order, under court supervision, and they effectuate their law enforcement interests.
So I think what he's saying, and others like John Miller, the New York Police Department, you've heard what he's argued, that the case, your case, is entirely overstated. It's a giant parade of terribles, that Apple is overstating this. It's one phone. It's one guy's phone. It's one and done. You say what?
Well, in the first place, it is not one phone. It is not one situation. We have already received indications in courts in various different parts of the United States from the federal government that they want to use the same technique and the same legal authority, although we think their legal authority is quite weak, in other cases, not just terrorism cases, but criminal cases, drug cases, other cases like that. Furthermore, the district attorney in New York has stated repeatedly that he has 175 cell phones. He wants to do the same thing in other cases to achieve access. What the government is doing, there's not hyperbole on our side. This is a statement of fact. This, if it happens today, it can happen in other cases on as equally thin a showing. The government hasn't shown that there is anything that they expect to obtain here. They would just like to look. They're asking Apple to design a new system to cripple the product that is so carefully created in response to the demands of the public all over the world for a product that secures their information and makes them safe. This is something that's very, very significant. There's no way that the government can justify by saying this is just one case or just one circumstance or just limited to terrorism. That is plainly not true, and they know it.
If you'll indulge, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, Ted, so if you think I'm being crass, it's not my intention. But your former wife died, Barbara Olson, on the hijacked American Airlines Flight 77. That was the one that crashed into the Pentagon. She had called you a couple of times from the plane before it did. If you knew or could have had access to the perpetrators behind that attack and their phones to reveal with whom they were communicating and what they were plotting, wouldn't you want to get your hands on that?
I'm sure that any person who could foresee a terrorist act affecting a member of their family or themselves would do anything. And probably be willing to violate the laws and would throw away the Constitution. But as you know, I served in the Justice Department. In that time, I was there when 9/11 happened.
Right.
I helped work with the FBI and other members of the Justice Department to devise legal tools that we could present to Congress, get congressional support for, that would help us seek out and prevent terrorism, but also at the same time protect the civil liberties of all our citizens. We realized, Neil, let me just finish. We realized that it was very, very important to deal with terrorism, but also to preserve the fundamental liberties that are protected by the Constitution. There's a balance there. We worked hard to sustain that balance, and we went to Congress for the authority. This is something that this administration has not done with respect to the same subject we're talking about here. They had proposed legislation that would have dealt with this issue. They withdrew that legislation and did not submit it to Congress.
All right, but